Today we'll look how to create a photo slideshow in Davinci Resolve. I'll be using the free version of Davinci Resolve 20, but this should work in pretty much any version of Davinci Resolve from the last few years. I've created this project in Davinci Resolve and I'm here on the Edit tab. First, I'll bring photos into my project. I'll expand the media pool here, so click on that. Now I'll right click in this area here, and I'll say Import Media. I have these files on my computer. I'll just select all of them and click Open. Now if I click on these images, you can see they're all different sizes. So what I can do is I can drag them to my timeline. I'll select them all. I'll drag it onto my timeline, and I'll let go. And you can see as I click through my project, they've all been fit to the screen. Now I like that by default, but if you want to have it behave differently, you can select all these images. Then you can go to the Inspector tab up here. If you don't see Inspector, click it. It's this word here. And then on the Video tab, scroll down. And then find where it says Retime and Scaling. Under Scaling, you can change how the images will be fit into your project. So you can say Crop, you can say Fit, Fill, or Stretch, and they'll all follow what you just set. Now personally, I like Fit, so I'll choose that. And each image will be best fit onto the frame. Now by default, these clips also came in at 5 seconds in length. Again, they're images, but 5 seconds is the default play length that they'll be there for. Once again, we can change this setting in bulk. So if you haven't selected your images, select them again. Now I can right click and choose Change Clip Duration. So let's click this. And it's the 5 second setting there, but let's make it 3 seconds. I'll replace the 5 with a 3. I'll hit enter. And now the clips will only play for 3 seconds. But of course we have these gaps here. That can easily be removed. Just go to Edit and then Delete Gaps. So I'll click this, and we've removed the gaps. Now Davinci Resolve can definitely be confusing if you're just getting started. If you're new, I recommend checking out my crash course video right here on YouTube. It's less than 30 minutes and covers all the basics you need to know, and also the aspects of it that you can safely ignore as a beginner. I'll leave a link in the description below. Now back to our slideshow, let's add a white border around our images. Now this should be simple, but unfortunately it takes one extra step than it should. Let me show you a method that seems like it will work. We can expand the Effects tab here, and I'll click on this hourglass, and I'll search for Colored Border. There we have the colored border. Now if I drag it onto my dolphin image here, let me let go. Unfortunately, you can see it gives a border for the whole frame, not just my image here. You can see the same thing if I do it for the bird here. Let's drag it onto that. So it has that type of effect. So let me undo this. So unfortunately that way doesn't work. Oddly enough, we can apply the same exact effect on the Fusion page, and it works as we expect. So with this first clip selected, I'll right click on it, and I'll say Open in Fusion page. Let me close the Inspector tab to give myself some more room. And I'll just make it so we have one viewer, so I'll click this button here. Now I know the Fusion page can be a little intimidating, but we're just going to do a very basic thing here. The main idea on the Fusion page is that you have your input here, that's the clip we selected, and then you have the output result. And right now our input is just going directly to the output, so there's no change. But we can add the color border effect in between here. So I have the effects expanded here. If you don't see that, just click Effects. And once again, I'll search for colored border. It's under Templates in this case. And I'll click and drag it here. Move your cursor over this yellow line. Then let go. And we've added the border. So if I go back to my edit page, you can see now it just has the border around my image. Let's go back to the Fusion page for a second. Let's quickly apply that effect to all the other images in our timeline. To do that, I'll expand the clips here. So down here you can see a preview of all the other clips. I'll shift select to select the other clips. Then I'll right click on that first clip, and I'll say Apply Compositions. What that will do is copy that border to the other images. So I'll click this. I'll just say Overwrite. And now we have the border on these other ones. So if you click through the other ones, you can see the border effect is there. So now we're all done with Fusion, and we can go back to the edit page. And once again, if we click through our timeline, the border is around our images. Now the background is looking a little boring. Let's add an effect called a blanking fill. This is when you fill in the black area with a blurred version of your main image. So we have an effect that does exactly that. I'll expand the Effects tab again. Let's search for blank. Now for this one I have to go to Open Effects. Make sure you have that selected for it to be found. And here's the blanking fill. If you hover over an effect, you can see a preview of what it does. So what I'll do is I'll click and drag it onto this bird image. Let's let go. And we have the basic effect here. Now it needs a little bit of tweaking. You can see it interfered with our border a little bit. So with this bird clip selected, I'll expand the Inspector tab again. Remember, the Inspector tab is basically the properties of whatever you have selected. And because we've added an effect, we can go to the Effects tab, and under Open Effects, this is where we have the properties of the blanking fill we just added. So I could toggle on and off. I could even delete it if I wanted to. I could reset it. And these settings below here are going to allow us to fix this border effect. So first of all, I can restore the side border here. Let me expand source. I just need to fix this crop left and right issue. So let's drag that in. So that fixed our main image. In the background, we're still having a problem with this border being visible. Fortunately, that's easy to get rid of. If I scroll down, under Fill Extent, I can click this. I can say Manual. And now I have the ability to modify the expansion and aspect. So I can expand. I can also change the aspect ratio if I want. And we can get rid of the border effect there. Now this expand option only goes up to 2, but you can actually manually type in higher numbers if you want. But I don't need it that high. Seems like 2 is enough in this situation. We can also add a drop shadow effect here, so I'll scroll down. I'll expand drop shadow. And let's give it some shadow here. So I'll increase shadow strength, maybe the distance. I'll make it extreme so you can see it, but you can do a more subtle effect if you like. So that's our shadow in there. Now let's quickly copy this effect to the other clips. I'll right click on my bird image here, and I'll say copy. Now what I'll do is I'll select the other clips by clicking and dragging. I'll right click on them, and I'm going to say paste attributes, or you can press Alt V. And when you do this, you have a choice of what you want to paste in. And this is going to come from the source we copied. In this case, I just want to have plugins selected. In other situations, you may want to have other aspects selected too. But here it's just going to be plugins because we want that Open Effects plugin. So now I'll click Apply. And now if I scroll through, you can see they all have that blanking effect there. By the way, something I forgot to do earlier was to make all our images just a little bit smaller to get more of a border there. So let's click and select all of them. I'll go to the Inspector tab again. And make sure you're at the top of the video section. And I can just change the zoom. So I'll zoom out a little bit. Let's do that. Maybe right there. And now I can see our images are all zoomed out a little bit. Now I noticed for that first image, we got a little bit of that border there. I'll select just that clip. I'll go back to the effects. This is our blanking fill. Let's tweak that a little bit. I'll expand the zoom a bit. Now that 2.0 is becoming a limitation. I can see a little bit of white there. Let's make it 2.5. Enter. And now it's gone. So that's an example of just tweaking one image a little bit differently than the other ones. And the other ones all still look good. Now let's see how to add transitions. This is how we can animate how one clip changes into another. To see transitions, you can expand the Effects tab again. I'll clear out my search box there. Make sure you do that. And then I'll go to Video Transitions. And when you scroll over a transition there, just move your mouse cursor back and forth, you can see a preview of the effect. So we have all these different effects here. If you find a transition you like, you can click and drag it between clips. So I'll drag it and let go there. Now when I play through, you see the transition happen. Let me undo that. We can actually apply the transition to all our clips. So I can click and select all of them. I can right click on the transition and say add to selected edit points and clips. So I'll click this. And now you can see that transition is between all of them. So if I play through there, that's the transition. And we have it again there. Transitions are a big topic, but I want to show you a few things you can do with them. First, I can delete the ones I don't want to be in there. So I don't like that I added this first transition. I'll just click on it and press delete. I don't like this last one either. I'll select it. I'll press delete. I can also change the length of the transition. So if this is too slow, I can make it faster by clicking here and dragging. Now it'll be faster. We can further modify transition properties by clicking on a transition and then looking in the Inspector tab under Transition. And here we have some of the same options. We can change the duration. We can also change the type of transition. So I'll click this drop down. Let's say clock wipe. So now when I play through here, it's a different transition. So there's lots of options for transitions here that you can play with. Another dynamic effect we can add is zooming. Unfortunately, this is just as simple as clicking a button. I'll select my image here. Let's go to the Inspector tab. And once again on that Video tab, I'll scroll down and I'll check Dynamic Zoom. Now when I play through it, you can see it's going to zoom like so. We can customize the zoom too. So on my canvas here, there's a drop-down box. This lets me choose the different ways to modify my canvas. So if I choose Dynamic Zoom, I can see the zoom properties. Green is where the zoom is going to start and red is where it's going to end. So let me do a really extreme version. Let's put the green there and let's put the red out like this. So when I play it, it'll start in this green area and then it'll zoom out to the red. So let's see if that happens. So we started the green and then it finishes in the red. So that was the extent of this zoom. And if you want to remove these controls, just go back here. I select Transform by default and just click it again to turn it off. And the zoom will still be there. Now you can apply the zoom individually to every single image, but let me show you a trick to apply effects to multiple clips at once. And this is to use an adjustment clip. So first let me turn off that zoom on the dolphin. I'll turn that off there. So what I'll do now is I'll go to my effects and under search, I'll choose adjustment. I believe it's under toolbox. So now we have an adjustment clip, and what I'll do is I'll click and drag this above my images. Let's put it above these first two. And an adjustment clip doesn't hold any video or image data, it just holds effects and transformation options. But what it does is apply those to the things below it. So it's very useful for having some effects that you want to drag across a bunch of images or videos. So in this case, if I play through, there's no change yet. But if I go and select my adjustment clip, I'm in my inspector tab, I'll turn on dynamic zoom, and now that will affect everything below it. So it affects that image, it affects our dolphin, but then it doesn't affect the fox. So it's a very powerful way to apply effect to multiple clips. Now finally, let's look at how to export our slideshow. To do this, I'll click on the rocket ship here. That's the Deliver tab, so I'll choose this. Then I'll click Browse here. I'll choose an output directory. I'll click Save. You can give your file a name. I'll call it Slideshow. And for format, I like MP4. Most of the other settings are okay. And now the important part, click Add to Render Queue. And then don't forget to click Render All here. So I'll press Render All. And our video is created. And here we have our final result. If you have any questions about Davinci Resolve, let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.